Welcome to part 2 of the interview with Mr. Jeff Steizer, the voice of God multiplayer from Halo, and so many countless other projects throughout the years. If you haven't watched the first part of this interview, I'll link it down below, that way you have some continuity. With that being said, let's return to our conversation with this epic member of video game history. Did you ever
So that was
manage
kinda
to
how I
play it
got
once
involved.
it became that ultra success? Because growing up, I was not an Xbox kid. I didn't own an Xbox. To own an
I didn't own
Xbox
one
was
either. This was the irony. So we finished the first game and they gave me a copy of it. It was like, "Uh-huh." I said, "Well, are you gonna give me an Xbox to play it on?" And they were like, "No," because they were like $350 or something. And back then, I'm an actor, supporting, family. I've got 2 kids, and we had a Nintendo and a PlayStation. I believe that's what we had. So we already had 2 gaming systems, and it was like, get a third just to play this game? I don't think so. So it was a couple of years before I ended up playing it. It had been out for a while. People knew what it was. And I kind of got hijacked. I was invited by a kid who was an intern at the Utah Shakespeare Festival. He said, "Hey, would you like to come over and have supper with my family, my parents and my siblings?" And I was like, "Sure, that'd be lovely." He was a nice kid. So I went over to their house, and his folks were terrific, probably about my age, and his siblings all seemed very nice. We had a great meal, and at the end of it, he said, "Hey," like it had just occurred to him, "Do you want to play some Halo?" And I went, "Oh, fuck me." Then I thought, "Well, how hard can it be? How hard can it be?" So
incredibly.
go down into their basement, and they've got like a wall which is the screen for everybody. So they got all these different, screens that you can play on. Everybody's got their own screen. And you got your control. And there's a beanbag on the floor that you sit on while you're playing. And so everybody starts playing and they're taking up. And so I get mine started and I'm walking myself down this hill and I'm looking around, sort of going, "Well, that's interesting. Nothing's happening." And then I see a building off to the right. And I thought, "Oh, well, maybe I should go investigate that." So I turn toward the building and I'm walking myself down that way, but I start drifting. So it's in front of me, but I can't quite keep myself from, I start to drift away. And the next thing I know, I overshoot the door and go into a corner and I can't get out. I can't
Oh
back out.
no.
Can't turn around. I'm so embarrassed. I can feel myself getting more and more flushed. And eventually, all of a sudden, they just turn and they notice what's going on and they start shooting me and they end up killing me. So, my experience of the game the first time was that I'd gotten that far and then I had to hear myself say, "Game over." And yeah, I was not thrilled. But, and then I went back and I played it since. I'm not good. I just don't have the coordination that
Well,
you
I mean, if you're
need.
whipping out this Olympic
Yeah.
shot put of a controller, this thing
Yeah.
doubles as an Olympic shot put. It also doubles as a, going
Yeah,
dark.
yeah, yeah.
It's bigger than my head. I hate this controller so much.
Yeah. It's hard. So, and then I watch people do it and it's like, son of a bitch, that's amazing. The ones when they're doing competitive gaming and stuff. And the other thing that's interesting about the game is that, as the announcer, I was saying all these things that you heard while you were playing multiplayer, but I didn't know anything about the story. So I eventually had to go and get like the Halo Encyclopedia and watch videos on YouTube to understand what was going on in the game I was the voice for. Now I did catch up and I do know a lot more about it. And it's like, oh, I remember, I can't remember which game it was. I thought it was the second game, although they pop up earlier. But at one point, I had the line, "Zombie killing spree." And I went, "Excuse me, are are there zombies in this game?" And they're like, yeah." And I said, "Can you tell me more about that?" And they were like, "Nope." And it's like, okay.
Okay.
And I asked Jen later, and she couldn't say much because everybody has signed NDAs. And she said, "Yeah, yeah, there are. You got it."
So for every iteration of Halo moving forward, were you called back in? So like Halo Infinite, you recorded more lines. They never took your voice samples and just reused it again. It was always fresh.
Well, I think some they did, but it was weird because, I was very surprised when we did the second game. First of all, it had been 4 years or something, 3 or 4 years. between the games, and they said, "Do you want to listen to what you did before?" And it was like, I think I need to, but if it'll make you feel happier, I thought to myself, sure, I'll listen to myself. And I listened a little bit, and I thought, yeah, that's pretty much what I thought I'd done. And then they would start us out, and there'd be more, pages and pages and pages of lines. And the way we'd record is I would do 3 takes of each phrase, word, whatever. 10 seconds remaining, 10 seconds remaining, 10 seconds. I'd do three. And then we go back and they'd say, do three more of this or that line, or can you try it a little bit this way or a little bit that way? And that's the way it would work. And invariably, we would start off and I'd be doing double kill and triple kill. And it's like, and kill-tacular. It's like, well, why are we doing those again? Well, because they want to make sure that everything sounds like it was recorded at the same time. It was like, all right, I guess so. So to this day, still get some of the old lines, which, I have never quite comprehended, but that's cool. So I don't think they do tend to use them. I think we go in and do new stuff, pretty much all the time. And sometimes they use it and sometimes they don't.
Yep, that's one thing I can say about Martin O'Donnell and Michael Salvatore is that they're really creative in utilizing the assets that they have. I did an
Right.
episode on YouTube. It was the top 10 most relaxing video game soundtracks, and they I think came in at third. So when
Yeah.
I'm working and doing productivity, scripting these videos, probably editing the same video that we're doing right now, I'm gonna be
Yeah.
listening to a Halo soundtrack just
Yeah.
because of
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
impressive it is.
It is. It
I
is
love them.
incredible. Yeah, there was a thing I saw on YouTube and I decided to watch it. And of course, invariably, it was an evening of a symphony doing music from video games. And there must have been like 20, 25 video games. They went from one to the other. Halo naturally was the last one. That's the one they decided to end on. And I mean, the minute you hear it, they had a choir that sang, and did all this stuff. It's amazing. It's incredible. It was one of the best things about the TV show was, they kept that music. And it's really impressive.
I don't know. There's a certain culture of Master Cheeks, is what they call that version of
Master Cheeks.
Yeah, because he ended up taking off his armor and he had his butt hanging out.
Oh
Yeah, it was
yeah,
the Halo
yeah.
fans are kind of you
Oh
don't
yeah.
mess with their source
Well,
material; they'll get you.
but you know what? It's interesting because you sort of understand it. And in the game, I mean, you are playing Master Chief, so it's kind of like the last thing you want to see is something that says, "See, it's not you." Because obviously a lot of people playing that character really identified with it, you know. So to be told pretty early on, no, it's this other guy who does not look like Steve Downes sounds, Steve being closer to my age, maybe even, I don't know if he's older or younger, but we're about the same age. And he's got that, great voice. And it's like you have a visual idea of what he would look like if you could see him, but you never see him. So you don't know. I mean, if you saw, Steve is actually not that tall and he's fairly grizzled, white hair, all that kind of stuff, but the voice does everything. It's a great voice. Same thing with Jen. She's a terrific voice actress, and she can be perky, she can be malevolent. sh- yeah, I mean, it's kind of nice not to know. I remember seeing the pictures of the guy who had done Batman, the animated series, who passed away recently. And it's like I never would have guessed that that voice came out of that guy,
Yeah,
you know.
he was a
Mark
skinny,
Hamill,
gaunt, unassuming, down to earth guy.
totally.
Yeah,
He just has that voice. I mean,
Kevin was
he's
it Kevin Connolly?
David, huh?
Was it Kevin Connolly? I don't remember.
Kevin Conway, I think, isn't it?
Conway.
Or
Yeah,
Conroy, one of the two. Yeah.
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 That was the voice of my childhood.
Yeah. I mean, he's got a great voice.
And people didn't realize that
Mark
Mark
Hamill,
Hamill, yeah, was doing Joker. Like
great voice. Yeah.
a
And
lot
you
of
just
people know
go,
him for Luke
what?
Skywalker, but he is Joker, and nobody can replace him. It's
Well, he's
insane.
not, that's right. And he's not just the Joker, but I mean, he's got a huge amount of voice work behind him now. It, I have to say, I love it. You know what I mean? Because again, unlike theater or even film, I mean, once you go in, you get to go right to work. There's not a lot of waiting around like there is in film. Film, I love being on a set, but there's an awful lot of sitting in your trailer, you know. And certainly during COVID, when we were doing stuff, it's like you didn't get to go hang out and watch, go to the craft table or, go watch people shooting or do any of the things that you could maybe slip in and do.
Yeah, high
Otherwise,
risk liability for.
yeah, yeah. And so you were always waiting for just a few seconds of, actual working. And on acting, you're paid very poorly. And again, it's 8 shows a week. Sometimes it's less now because they can't build theaters 8 times a week. And it's a lot. It's much more, it's more labor intensive. With voice acting, you go into a booth and you got your engineer and your writer, and they're generally terrific folks who are great fun. And you just go boom, 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 and there are laughs. Occasionally you'll hit some. One of the things that used to happen is that they would have me recording stuff for the game, and I would be doing something really outrageous, and then they would turn their mic on, and I could hear them laughing hard in the other room. It's like, that was great. Wow, that's wonderful. And I was like, oh, okay, good. It was wonderful. I love that kind of work.
Yeah, and you're almost getting instantaneous feedback too, which allows you to
Yep.
kind of mold versus working in
Yep.
a theater where you're surrounded by, say, in a scene you've got, because like I said, I did theater for a little bit,
Yeah.
and you've
Yeah.
got 20 people around looking at you suddenly if you make a mistake or if you're getting feedback. It's almost embarrassing because you're expected to assume the role that you're in and know that role and know your lines and do everything perfectly.
Well, and you don't have to know your lines doing voice work because you're reading them. You have to make it sound like you are saying them. That's the job. But I don't find that all that tricky,
I
you
find it
know?
peaceful being in a voice booth. I did a few
Yeah.
voiceovers for like just independent products that are not even on IMDb or anything. Just uh,
Yeah.
like for example, this week I'm going to do videography. My buddy, he's a veteran. He's stationed at Davis Mountain right now. He's active duty down in, I think it's Arizona or
Hmm.
something. And he's working on, yeah, Tucson. He's down in Tucson, Arizona, and he's doing a project for social skills for men post COVID because he felt like there was a generation of men
Ooh.
who weren't able to develop their social skills where we were all shuttered for a long period
Yeah,
of time.
yeah.
And he's
Yeah, yeah.
also a professional magician on the side, so he's incorporating that.
Oh, that's great.
So I'm going to be doing the videography for that. It's not some Hollywood level thing. And I told him, I'm going to do this ad gratis because I know how much it means to you. And,
Oh,
so
that's fantastic.
they covered my flight there, and I'm going to stay with, I've known his family. I was there
Flying?
for his
Where are you
wedding.
going? Where are you doing it?
We're in Phoenix, Scottsdale area.
Oh my God. Oh, that'll be nice.
So we have our
Right time of
Airbnb
the
and
year to
everything.
be there.
Huh?
Right time of the year to be
It
there.
is. It's starting to get cold
It's
down in
not
Florida.
120 degrees. Yeah.
It's getting up there. So we're gonna transition to your newer years. Obviously, COVID was a big deal. You did Metal Lords and Pod Encounter. It was a little short.
Yeah.
And the last video store on Earth was probably
Yes.
one of the last ones before COVID really snuck in and kind of affected
Well,
all of us.
we did that both before and during COVID, actually, because what they did was when we started that series, I'd been in a play called The Nance, and I played the not the second banana. What do they call the guy? It was like Abbott and Costello vaudeville stuff, and I was like Bud Abbott. I was the straight man for the clown. And there was another character. There were three guys in it, and the third guy was this young actor who was very, very talented and a real go-getter. And he asked me if I would play this character in one episode of the first season of the last video show on Earth. And I said, sure. So we had to shoot at night. So we started at 11:30 at night and we went until we finished. So I remember driving home at like 3:34 in the morning. Um, because we had to go through it a couple of times, and I was on my way out. I was going to go off to some other place, and that was it for me for that series. Then they had me back for the second series, and I think the third series, and I think we had four series. It was either three or four. The last series was during COVID, and we did them as a series of Zoom conversations for all the different characters, which was fun, but it was kind of like, "Oh, fuck, I've gotta be my own, cinematographer and set myself up," and, it was an interesting experience, but that was how that all worked out. This kid is so talented. Really, really a terrific person too. But did that, and then my son-in-law was involved in the film that was done where I did the narration. What was the Yeah, Pentagram in New York. It was a mockumentary kind of thing. My daughter was in it as well. They both were improvisers in New York City. And so they had me doing, the kind of announcer voice that you might hear, that sort of
Don
thing.
Pardo, is that you?
Little bit like that. Yes, it was.
I want to watch that documentary, that biopic or whatever, Saturday night. I don't know if you've seen the trailer for it.
I have seen it. Yeah. Well, I'll certainly watch it once it, shows up free someplace. But there's also a great book, Live from New York, which is an oral history of SNL from the very beginning all the way up to not the most recent people. I think it came out in like 2005 or 10 or something, but it's unbelievably interesting. It's so incredible. I don't know how those people did it. It's insane. Um, I Yeah, I was there for about 6 years. I loved it. I miss it like crazy. I left it because the work wasn't necessarily all that satisfying because a lot of the folks who go to New York go there to get, seen, and it's all about them. And so the sort of thing that I'd grown up, learning that doing theater was all about, which was it was a group activity. Think of it as like being a sports team and you got one player who's like, I don't care what the coach said the play was going to be. I'm going to take off and do this. That's right. And that's what you find a lot of in theater all over the country now. It's very unsettling. And I had not been able to put my finger on what was wrong. I mean, there were amazing actors in New York. I got to do a lot of stuff, meet some incredible people. But I was just, it wasn't satisfying, and I couldn't figure out what it was. And then I went to see a play called August Osage County because I had a friend playing the lead in it. She won the Tony that year. And I went around afterwards. I was blown away with the show. And I was talking with her. And then two more of the cast members came out, Rondi Reed and Amy Morton, who have had film careers and stuff since. Great performers. And I was, just gushing about the show. And Rondi said, well, Jeff, the guy who plays my husband, I've been working with him for 37 years. And another actor in the show, Jeff Perry, who's also done TV stuff, said, yeah, I look around the dinner table at the end of Act Two. There are people I've worked with for 35 years, people I've worked with for 20 years, people I've worked with for at least 15 years. It's like everybody has so much history, and that's what it used to be. And in New York, I mean, I've sat and watched actors just completely run away with the show, and be lauded for it and get noticed, but it's like that isn't what it's supposed to be.
So it's the same for me in the streaming world. Not nearly the same capacity, but I am a firm believer of we all dine at the same table. It's the one lesson my
Yeah.
dad gave me that stuck. And my dad wasn't some wise guy. He never really left me with any prophetic advice. It was the traditional Southern dad stuff. Don't write a check your ass can't cash if you don't have the money in the bank. That kind of stupid stuff. Don't pee in an electric fence. The practical
Yeah.
things. One of my
Good
favorite
advice.
memories with him. I remember, and I the other day I was missing my dad a lot. My dad passed away from cancer 3 years ago,
Oh,
and I was just really in my emotions. And I I remember I was 9 years old. We had just gone to see The Lion King. It was some little play. It was the play version of Lion King. And he brought me to
mm.
an arcade, and his favorite game ever was Galaga. Galaga was his game, and I got it tattooed on me. My whole family tree is an arcade sleeve, is what I
Oh my
have here.
God. Oh my God.
And I burnt through like $5, and there were no stools for me to stand on. I was never a tall kid. And I
Yeah.
remember apologizing for weighing so much, and he got down on my level and he said, "You're not going to understand it now, but happiness is weightless." And we just left. And as an adult with 5 kids now, seeing my kids play on the Mickey Mouse TV, games that I grew up playing, that really resonates with me now.
Yeah.
So
Well, I mean, that's the thing. It's sort of where I'm at right now is friends and family are what's important as far as I'm concerned. So, I've spent most of my life, running after the next job, worrying about what I was going to do next, not always enjoying the job I was doing at the time, which is stupid. So I would advise all of the people watching, it's like live your life, enjoy your life, have a great, great time, and hold your friends and family close because you think they're going to be around forever. And like you, I lost my parents, and you don't realize what that really entails. You don't understand that they were the repositories of all this information about you and your upbringing and your family, and it's gone. How often have you found yourself, oh, I want to ask my dad about something, what was the name of that guy, or what happened with the family member, or what about that trip? Well, how did we end up going there? And you don't have that opportunity now,
Yep, my dad was a very successful radio DJ down in Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
Really? Oh my God.
He would meet with celebs all the time. He had Bon Jovi pictures all over his from where he came in. Taylor
Wow.
Swift,
Oh
and
my
he was well
God.
known for. He created this show called Made in Tiger Country, which
Oh
was
wow.
Tiger 100.7, the radio station. He was really well known, and that was tough because the thing I would do is I would message him. I'd be like, "Hey, what's this song?" And I did it the other day without thinking, and I was like,
Oh
"I'm
yeah.
never gonna get this response. I don't know why I did this." And I think that's what kind of kickstarted my my sadness that day. And I remember messaging my wife, and I was like, "I'm missing my dad today." She's like, "Is there anything I can do?" I was like, "No, not really." So she came home and she opened the door, sneakily looked at me, and she threw a thing of Reese's cups at me, and then she slammed the door. I was like, "Was it? Did you just chocolate grenade me?" I was like,
Oh,
"Yeah, I love
sounds
my
like you
wife and
have
my
a
kids there."
good partner in life.
Yeah,
Oh,
but I have to tell myself, and this is a big reason why I got out of the military. And for anybody watching, this is, Mr. Jeff said his own thing. I'm going to say my own thing. The only people who will remember you are busy in 30 years are your kids and your significant others. Nobody
yeah,
else will. Not your bosses, not your coworkers. It's your kids. And
that's
that's why I stream at night, because I refuse to hear my children grow up on the other side of a wall.
yeah,
My
yeah.
youngest just turned 1. She's a sweetheart. She learned how to say no, and that's all I've heard for, a few months now.
There's this amazing thing. It's Reels on it's on Facebook or is it YouTube? I guess it's on YouTube. There's this Asian couple that do these videos. They've got a little tiny child, and they are screamingly funny because they're all. I mean, and it's a family, and it's all this family stuff. It makes me howl. I just love it so much. And of course, I never thought I'd be that guy. I'm not a cat person that like looks at kitty videos and stuff, but I look at baby videos all the time, be reminded of what it was like when my kids were little. My son at one point got so ticked off at me. He was really upset because I told him he couldn't. He was really young. He said, "I'm not going to invite you to my birthday party."
Fine, I didn't want to go anyway.
And it was just like, I was just like, I laughed, and that didn't help. But because it's like, well, who's paying for your birthday party, pal? But yet, that they're so little and they have so little power, and they have all these huge feelings, and they're trying to figure out all this stuff. It's amazing to be a part of that. I mean, that's what we're here for. That's what we're here for. The other stuff is gravy. It's great. I have had such an amazing life in the arts, and I have so many memories that I love to keep sharing with my friends, to the point where I'm sure they want to lock the door and not let me in. But nevertheless, it's been great. But it's the friends and family. You're absolutely right. That's what counts.
Yeah, and those memories, they play a key role in our identity and who we are.
Yep,
So we're running
absolutely.
out of time again. So I wanted to ask, if is there any advice that you have in a modern world? Because obviously the industry has changed. It's very dynamic. What worked back in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s is not the same structure now that we live in a more technologically advanced and more kind of remote setting in many
Yeah,
ways. We did more with less. That was what the pandemic was all about. But do you have any
yeah.
advice for anybody who wants to pursue or even stick their toes into the voice acting world?
Well, interesting you should ask that, and I'll tell you why. I have a website, jeffsteitzervoiceactor.com, And on that website, I have a section which is a blog. And I try to get it updated. I've done, I think, 7 or 8 articles. I've got one more to do about agents and where to look for work. But basically, it is some of the thoughts. It answers the questions that, or the question that you just asked. It's like, how to get into voiceover. The first article is, are you sure you want to? And then it talks about the pros and the cons of trying to pursue that. And then it's like, well, okay, if you're still with me for the second blog, then I start talking about the equipment you're going to need. And it isn't necessarily as much as you think, just to get started, the kind of training you're going to want to have, the fact that you're an actor. I mean, you've got a great voice. So you're already, you're sort of ahead of the curve in that regard. The fact that you've had some acting experience, hugely important if you're going to be doing or trying to do voice work. And of course, almost everybody that gets in touch with me and asks are people who want to do games, or maybe animation, which I understand. It's, great, great fun. Um, Having acting experience is very important. But then having the equipment, because more often than not, at least to get an audition, you're going to have to do that from home, which means you're going to probably have to have some kind of a home studio with your own microphone. And, it can be as simple as a USB setup, or you can have an audio interface. You've got to find a digital audio workstation that you can work with. For most people, whatever their favorite is, it's the one they learned on. There are people who swear by Pro Tools. Pro Tools defeated me every single time I ever tried to learn it. So, I learned on Audacity and I still use it.
I like
And it
Audacity.
does
I use Audition
great.
now, but Audacity was my bread and butter back then.
Absolutely. And whatever it is, there are so many out there and they all basically do the same thing. They take your voice, they turn it into zeros and ones and, pass it along so it can be stored in your computer. That's all fine. And so, just there's a lot of learning that goes on, but I'm an autodidact. I love to learn. So, I'm still taking classes. I've got a class coming up. When is this happening? It's an audiobook thing I think I'm doing. I've done a couple of audiobook ones. I did a great class with a casting director named Jen Rudin. Sorry, Rudin. Jen was the one who cast films like The Incredibles for Disney and Princess and the Frog and all these things. And then she was sent to New York to be in charge of casting for Disney theatricals. She was the woman who helped get me cast in Mary Poppins, which I did for a year and a half on Broadway. So I took a class from her, and it was so funny. I thought she's never going to
You were
remember me.
Admiral
First,
Boom, right?
I was Admiral Boom
Yeah.
in the bank shaman, played two parts. And the first thing she says is like, Jeff, I'm so glad that you're here. I mean, I saw your name and I was so excited. And I was like, I can't believe you even remember me, but okay. And it was great. And now we're back in touch. And, there are places you can go to get training. There are places you can go to meet agents. There are places you can go, all that kind of stuff. And I think you're going to find that most voice talent of my acquaintance are willing to help up to a point. Don't ask them to introduce you to their agents. You know what I mean? Because we're not going to know you all that well. And if you're going to make that kind of a recommendation, you have to be able to stand behind it and say, I guarantee this person will work out. And if you don't know that person, But other things like where else can I go to get seen? It's like, are you getting samples made? Are you doing, have you got a website? Have you got a demo? Have you got all those things that any voice actor needs? So I talk about all that on my blog. Okay.
Which we'll link down below in the description for everybody who wants to check this
That's
out.
great. It'll also take it out. I've also got something called services. So, because I do cameos and you can find me to do those. And I sign autographs through my agency, CelebWorks, who handle my personal appearances. I'm going to be doing a fan convention in Columbus, Ohio on November 2nd and 3rd of this year, coming up in 2 weeks. I'll be in Columbus. So if anybody is watching this, if this is up by then, come see us. It'll be me, Steve, and Jen. We're all going to be there. So if you're a Halo fan, it's the trifecta.
I think I'm going to try it now that I'm a YouTube partner. I might try to swing by PAX East. So if you end up going to PAX East, let me know. I'll give you crisp high five, and then I'll walk the other way.
Love that. But yeah, I went to New York Comic Con last year and it was sort of a last minute thing. And I was as far away from anything as you could be.
Right.
The thing I heard most often from folks was, I had no idea you were going to be here. And it's like, well, that's not good.
I'm just a person. All right, well, I wanted to say thank you so much for taking the time to sit down and give us an insider look into your personal history, the history of Halo. And like I said, we'll go ahead and link down his personal website in the description below so that those resources are there for you to sit there and learn if you want to step into this industry. It's really feast or famine, but it's incredibly rewarding at a personal level when you do manage to get that going. And I believe Mr. Jeff is a perfect example of that. And I do want to say thank you for taking the time to talk to us.
Thank you for having me. This has been great fun.
At the end of the interview, I sat back in my chair and I smiled. I had spent time speaking with someone I had never met, yet I felt that I was catching up with an old friend. Mr. Jeff's story and his experience in the arts showcases a life well lived, a life spent exuding self-expression, and a lifelong dedication to entertaining others. And for just a brief moment, removing them from everything that was weighing them down. As a performer, that's no easy feat, and with simply a voice, Mr. Jeff ushered us and countless others into experiences that defined our childhoods. And I'm eternally grateful for having the chance to speak with him. I've linked his blog information down below, and if you're an aspiring voice actor, perhaps you should check it out.